first of all, thanks everybody for being here. My name is Edgar Garcia. I'm the Director of Planning for here at the City of McAllen here. As you may have noticed or may have heard, we are updating our comprehensive plan. The last time this has happened was in 2007, so certainly a lot has changed in the past 15, 16 years. We need your public comments because we want to make sure that as we plan for those 20 to 30 years, that we get y'all's input, because at the end of the day, we're planning for y'all, right? The quality of life that we're gonna make and we're gonna provide is for y'all. So if we don't get your input, we're just kind of planning in theory, I guess. With me tonight is also Caitlin Admire. She's with Friesen Nichols. She'll be leading a big part of this presentation. And then we have Nate Baker as well. He's our transportation consultant, and we'll be talking about certain items of those as well. I think I've already mentioned this, but I was going to say it again. The first 30, 40 minutes will be right here in this room. We're going to give a brief presentation, and then we're going to head over to the room next door, where we're going to have some more dynamic things and kind of get to that question and answer and the conversation more. So without further ado, Caitlin Admire.
Thanks, Edgar. All right, so I'm going to try to keep this shorter than 30 to 40 minutes. So I like the conversation more than the speaking at you, so I will do my best. Yeah, so we're going to start with this presentation, then we'll move into the room next door where we've got many members of our planning team here, so a few more members from my team at Friesen Nichols. We are the lead on the comprehensive plan process. We have multiple members from Quantum Consulting. Again, they're our transportation mobility. We have members from TXP here, which are our economic development consultant, so he's here as well to talk to you guys. So we'll have informational boards, the team will be available. We have many city staff here tonight as well, so we will just be available for questions, comments, conversations, and discussion and feedback. So for this presentation, we're going to start, I'm going to give you a quick just project overview, where we've been, what we've been doing, where we are now. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've heard from our community engagement so far, and then we'll give you a brief overview of the plan topics and some of the content that we've delivered to the city up to this point. We have some draft chapters available, others are still to come, so we'll talk a little about what's in those. Then we'll just talk about next steps and then instructions just for the next portion of the meeting. So we'll jump in with project overview. I kind of already introduced our team, but obviously we're working very closely with the City of McAllen as their consultant team. Us at Friesen Nichols are the lead, with our sub-consultants, Quantum on transportation and TXP on economics. So why do we plan? A comprehensive plan is not a regulatory plan. It's not zoning, it's not regulatory. It is a vision and a guiding document that that establishes a blueprint for where the city wants to go and what it wants to be in 20 to 30 years. It gives direction, it gives decision-making criteria for the city staff to use when they're making zoning decisions and things like that, and it creates a vision that different stakeholders, both from the city as an organization and the city staff and the elected officials, to the private sector, businesses and developers in the community, and then as well as the community more broad, it's a tool for you guys to hold your city government accountable. They said they were going to do these things. Have they done these things? So it's a reflection of the community vision. We start off every comprehensive plan process with a 6-month analysis and visioning stage to really set the baseline for the plan. It's long-term statements that guides policy, but it is not, again, policy. It is a basis for subsequent ordinances, such as code updates, creation of ordinances, creation of policy, things like that. And it's a decision-making tool, like I said. It is not legally binding. It's not a zoning ordinance. It's also not meant to sit on a shelf. That makes us very sad as planners to see our work just get dusty on a shelf. So we want to see this utilized both by the city, by the community. We really want to see this document have an impact. So the project schedule, where we've been, so for the first, like I said, 6 months, we did an initiation, we did preliminary stakeholder and community engagement, we did some analysis, visioning, and creation of guiding principles. And then the last few months and into February, we've been creating draft chapters and delivering those. Those are available online at manor2040.com. If you took one of the flyers, the QR code takes you to that website. So all of the draft chapters that we have delivered so far are online. We have been having CPAC meetings, so that stands for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. So that is a group of community members who were appointed by the City Commission to serve as kind of our advisory group for this project. We've done additional community engagement as well as a UDC diagnostic. So that's your Unified Development Code. We are also working on that kind of in parallel to the comprehensive plan, is an update to your development code. So early in the spring, you will see a full draft. So we'll take all of the feedback we get from these meetings, all the feedback we get online, and on the draft plans that are out, the draft chapters that are out there right now, we'll put them all together in kind of a full document that will then be publicly released for like 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll collect additional community and public feedback on a full draft plan. We'll do comments and revisions. We'll do a little bit more work on the UDC, and then we'll look to be having comprehensive plan approvals late spring of this year. And then we'll look at the UDC finalization and adoption in the summer, early fall. So what we have heard so far, we have done 2 public events. We've done 3 virtual events. We've had 3 CPAC meetings. That's now 4 as of 3 p.m. today. And we've done 4 focus group meetings, including a set of specific stakeholder meetings around your UDC update. So again, this week, we went to the City Commission Monday evening and had a briefing with them. We had a CPAC meeting earlier today, and then obviously this community event here tonight. There will be a virtual version of this community meeting online. It's live right now. By the end of the week, we are recording this presentation, so we'll also have that up online by the end of the week, we hope. So if you have any additional thoughts that you wake up in the middle of the night tonight and realize you forgot to tell us, you can go online and leave those. Or if you have any friends or family, neighbors who can't be here tonight, please let them know, and they can participate in this meeting virtually at the McAllen2040.com. We had an online survey that we had up for quite a while. You can see there from June to October. That was our initial feedback. We had quite a bit of traffic there. We got up to 200 survey responses. We got a really nice bump when we were last here in October, so that was good to see that we were reaching some people with our last community engagement. We hope the same thing will happen this week. So we were at the Freedom Festival back in July. It was very hot, and that was just kind of initial visioning. The community meeting that we were here, we were in the same location back in October. We're getting initial input on some of the chapters that we've now delivered, like the land use and neighborhoods and preservation chapter in downtown. We've started seeing some recurring themes from the community input, what people love, what they want, what they see as obstacles. So these are all things that we then use moving forward into creating the vision, creating the guiding principles, creating the recommendations. One thing that we've really loved about being here in McAllen is we've definitely gotten a really good constructive feedback, but everyone is so positive. Like even when they're giving constructive feedback, it's in a positive way. And you guys have just been such a welcoming and open community, really passionate. And so I love to point out that thing on the bottom at the what people love is everything. And that's a comment we got. And you guys are just really a really engaged but positive community. So thank you guys. In emerging priorities, people and community, streets and traffic, parks, those are our top 3. These are all things that are addressed throughout the plan topics, which is good to see that what we're recommending is aligning with what the community says are their priorities. And this is what we take into consideration as we're making those recommendations. The vision and guiding principles, this vision statement was created based on the initial community feedback and then also in partnership with the CPAC, as well as the vision and guiding principles. The guiding principles are what really, in the chapter online, you'll see there's a little bit more paragraph detail in each of these that really explains how that guides the recommendations then going forward. And this is really the baseline for everything that we use going forward for creating the comprehensive plan and recommendations. So in the plan, there will be all of these chapters, so future land use, downtowns and neighborhoods, transportation and mobility. The drafts of those have all been completed and are up online. We will have some of that content at our boards in the next room, so please come around and talk to us about those, give us feedback. Parks and infrastructure and economic development are to be delivered soon, so those will also be online when those drafts are completed. And then finally, the implementation chapter will be online soon as well. So just to give you a little idea of what is in some of these chapters and maybe spark some questions or conversation that you want to have when we move into the next room, we're going to give you a little bit of an overview about what we have in these chapters right now. So in the land use chapter, we start with just some general topics of interest that we think McAllen should consider as you go forward in making decisions about your growth. So including the additional missing middle housing, which is this graphic down on the bottom. So it's not single family detached homes. It's not, apartment buildings, but it's all these things in the middle. It's duplexes, it's townhomes, it's fourplexes, triplexes, those kind of things. So that's a big conversation across the nation in planning and just getting some of that diversity of housing that then allows for a diversity of income levels and life stages and things like that to be in your communities. We talk about conservation development and how you preserve open space while still growing, transit-oriented development and how do you grow in locations where there is access to goods, services, jobs, education, opportunity, and complete communities, which really means in its most basic sense that someone can get all of the services or daily needs within, say, a 10 or 15 minute walk or bike ride of their home. So those are some of the general themes we talk about in land use. We have a preliminary land use plan, so we don't expect you to take this all in right now. These are on boards printed out very big in the next room, so please, if this is what you're interested in, please come look at this and talk to us about it. The big things to note, so your city shape is very odd. It's very long and skinny. But what it does, it lends itself well to having a series of nodes, whether that's downtown or the bright red nodes are mixed-use developments, commercial or employment industrial nodes, and then having those nodes connected by corridors, whether those are commercial corridors, which are the kind of salmon pink in there, or what we're calling green corridors, which is kind of like your Bicentennial Boulevard, where it's got some green space, a trail corridor, that kind of thing. And then filled in between those nodes and corridors are your complete communities. And there's a couple different levels of complete community that we have in this land use plan, just allows for different levels of scale and density. And then in that chapter, this is just one example, but in that chapter you will see there is this dashboard that we call it, a land use dashboard for every land use category that we have proposed. And this is really the decision-making tool that Edgar and his team will use at the planning department. So what it does is it lays out a target development ratio, so that's residential versus non-residential development. It lays out target development types within each of those. So there's a scale of single-family detached homes up to larger multifamily, and what ratio of that is appropriate in these different land use categories. The same with the non-residential development types. And then down at the bottom in this matrix, we talk about different development types, so whether that's a home or a multifamily building or a mixed-use building or a shopping center. And then we have a level of appropriateness that type of development would be for this land use, and then some description as well on when that type might be a little bit more appropriate based on like context or adjacencies or buffers and things like that. So each land use category has a dashboard. So then we've started looking at downtown. There's definitely still more to come, but we've started identifying opportunities, barriers, and gateways. Luckily, you have many, many more opportunities than barriers, so that's really exciting. We think there's a lot of opportunity in downtown. We've started identifying, and you're not meant to have to read all of this. It's in the chapter, it's in the boards. But we've started identifying different districts within downtown. You do have a pretty large downtown, so having some different focus areas within downtown, talking about uses and how you treat the built environment in those different districts. So we have a retail, government, commerce, entertainment, mixed use, and then the Archer Park District. We've also started identifying priority streetscapes. So this isn't necessarily priority in terms of do this first or second or third, it's more of a priority of investment. So first tier streetscapes are those streets where we imagine you would put more investment into, and then second tier is still put investment into them, but just maybe not as much, you don't have to have everything in those streets, and then third tier is, you know, you can make them better, upgrade them, but you don't have to put as much money into them. You know, putting everything on every street is not necessarily the most efficient use of city resources, so we're doing some prioritization there. And then in the neighborhoods chapter, we like to talk about this idea of a vicious versus a virtuous cycle of growth within cities. And generally, you obviously want the virtuous cycle just by its name. But what it is, it's, you know, there's these cycles of urban decline, and it can start in kind of any of these bubbles. It's not necessarily one starting place that we see, but generally it's that a community stagnates in some way. There's a lack of opportunities and a decline in quality of life. Residents and business leave or stop investing in their community. Your tax base shrinks, your public and private investment shrinks, and then the community stagnates even more, and it's kind of a downward spiral. When we talk about the virtuous cycle of urban growth, there's public investment, there's an improved quality of life and access to opportunities, there's more investment from businesses and residents, there's new businesses and residents that then come and invest in a community, and then there's an increased tax base, more public investment, and so on. That being said, not everything about the urban growth process that I just said is virtuous, right? We know there's unintended consequences that come along with urban growth, such as sprawl and displacement and congestion and strain on city resources. So we have started talking about this in the downtown and neighborhoods plan. We will do more into how do you get that urban growth cycle without, or at least addressing some of the unintended consequences that you could see with that. So that's going to be a big part of the conversation in that chapter. We've started identifying some areas within the city that taking the land use plan could be targets for possible what are small area plans, which is kind of the next level of detail down from this kind of overall future land use plan. So we've talked about downtown and what we're calling uptown, which is kind of that piece north of downtown, the US 83 corridor, the 10th Street retail corridor, underutilized lands around the mall and convention center, the medical and technical innovation centers, which were identified in your EDC plan that the city has already adopted. This includes the old Civic Center area. Proposed medical district around the UTRGV campus that's coming on your eastern side, and any other unique historical or heritage areas in the city would be good candidates for a small area plan, kind of that deeper dive. And then we also have a conversation about character and preservation, which is the built environment, the buildings, the streetscapes, those kind of things, the urban design. How do you reflect the community pride and McAllen's values in your physical space of your city? So with that, I'm going to invite Nate up to talk to you a little bit about the transportation.
Again, my name is Nate Baker. I'm with Quantum Consultants, and we're based out of El Paso, Texas, so a fellow border community. So I want to talk a little bit about the transportation chapter. It is drafted, but we're continuing to listen and make tweaks to the chapter as we have these meetings and we have meetings with the City Commission and with the CPAC. And to walk through this chapter, I want to talk a little bit about where we are, where McAllen is now as a community, where McAllen is going, and how it can get there. So where it is now, we've been looking at qualitative and quantitatively and through conversations and learning about the different elements of the built environment, the different corridors, what's working well, what's not working well, and how that might inform the drafting of the chapter itself. We've heard from people that they are experiencing growing commute times and congestion as the community grows, something that Caitlin alluded to earlier. There's a lot more regional travel happening, so more people who live in McAllen are going to work in other places. More people who live in other places in the region are coming to McAllen to work, and fewer people are living and working in McAllen. So that means people are driving longer distances and going between different jurisdictions. We know, as always in McAllen and across the country, that deaths and injuries are a problem. Have always been a problem, but continue to be a problem. In part because of the design of the infrastructure. And so that's something that we'd like to work on addressing. We know that there are growing costs associated with everything now, and that includes infrastructure, particularly transportation infrastructure. And as we can see here, transportation is a really important issue for households, for families. It's a major expenditure. And looking at the data, we actually learned that transportation expenditures are the same or higher for households as housing costs. And so that's something that we want to consider throughout this process. So where are we going? And thinking about how we've drafted the chapter and how we continue to make tweaks and listen to folks. There was a major effort to develop the guiding principles, which have helped us, directed us throughout the process of creating the chapter. So the goal is connected regionally and beyond. And so we've taken that and created goals and policies around that. So we have goals, policies, guiding principles. There's a strong emphasis on the connection between land use and transportation in this chapter. So everywhere you go, when you're traveling, you're also looking at buildings. So buildings and transportation infrastructure interface with one another. So it's really important that that's coordinated. There are important concepts that are coming from around the country, experiences that other communities are having, both good and bad, that we've learned from. So Vision Zero and ensuring that we have safer streets is one concept. Complete streets and ensuring that the community has input on the way that the transportation infrastructure is changing is also very important. And we've heard a lot about mass transit and the desire for more folks to have more options in the way that they get around, both locally and regionally. And so that's something that you'll also see reflected in the chapter. And then finally, street connectivity and design, making sure that streets are connected to one another, that people have options in how they get from point A to point B throughout the city and the region, and how the design of those streets is. And then finally, how do we actually get there? How do we actually achieve what we've set out to do? Most importantly, as Caitlin mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, plans can sit on the shelf and gather dust. It's very easy for that to happen. So it's all about the community, it's about stakeholders getting involved. Once this plan does get adopted, that's not the finish line, that's the beginning, and making sure that the plan gets implemented. And the elected officials are going to be key in the implementation of the plan. But the comprehensive plan will have tools, and this chapter will have tools for transportation. Here are some of those tools. There will be an implementation section. That section includes actions, and those actions include priorities. What are the actions we proactively want to take in order to implement the comprehensive plan? There's going to be a thoroughfare plan, so a map that actually shows, as the city continues to grow outward, where do we actually place arterial roads, collector roads, and local roads. So there's a map that provides that guidance. That map is tied to some design guidance, so actual cross sections and design of the infrastructure of the roads. So that's going to be in the comprehensive plan. And as Caitlin mentioned, there's going to be small area plans, so that also includes corridor plans. So there's going to be some direction. Where do we want to focus? Where's the next level of detail for corridor planning? This is all tied, of course, to capital investments, so local tax dollars that are going to go toward transportation spending, a planning process that occurs every year, every 2 years. Updates to the development regulations, which are going to be really critical. And then finally, all of this packages together and helps justify when the city goes out and wants to get state or federal money for transportation, it'll be well positioned to do so. So we'll be in the next room. We've got some boards. We want to hear back from you. Please, please, please show up at our table and give us your ideas for how we can make transportation better in McAllen.
All right. So next steps in the process is that we will, like I said, have this online version of this engagement here tonight, and that'll be open through early February, so about a month. Upcoming draft deliverables over the month of February will be the Parks and Infrastructure, Economic Resilience and Implementation, and then we will have that full draft plan out for public review and feedback in the spring. So that's where we're going next. Where we're actually going next right now is into the next room. So you can either come through this door here, or you can go back out in the hall and go through the door there, but this is probably easier. We will have stations. We have an economic development station, land use in downtown, transportation. We have some questions about parks to help us as we start going into that Parks and Infrastructure chapter. So please visit our stations. Any questions you have, any discussions you want to have with us, with anyone on the team, with people from the city, just feel free to ask or discuss anything that you feel you need to in the next room. So that is it.